Hello, everybody. Today we have Antony Penrose with us. He's a son of Lee Miller. Lee Miller was many things to the world, but to Antony, she was his mother. Today, Antony is here to help us understand the woman behind the legacy. Before we begin, I would like to welcome Antony to our channel and thank him very much for taking the time and speaking with us. Thank you so much, Antony, and welcome to our channel.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Antony, people know Lee Miller as a model and war correspondent, but as a son, who was she to you?
She was not somebody I knew very well because during the first 25 years of my life, she was badly affected by her war experiences, what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. And that made her very distant. It made her somewhat irrational at times. And it made her also very dependent on alcohol. So she was a difficult person for me to get on with.
Do you have a favorite memory of her that shows how she was like at home?
Well, yes. I mean, there were plenty of good memories, but she was a person that I was very cautious about. I kept a distance from her because she was very unpredictable in the way she behaved towards me. And for a child, that's not good. As a kid, you need somebody that's constant. And so I kind of backed off a lot, but I remember some really nice things that we had, particularly when we were traveling overseas. We did a lot of travel together. And I remember some great times we had in Paris, particularly where she could speak good French, and she seemed to be having so many friends over there. So I enjoyed hanging out with her there.
What was she like behind the camera? Did she ever show to you how she worked as an artist?
She was a very different person behind the camera. When she picked up a camera, she was totally focused on what she was doing. And this was the moment that I had my best connection with her because as a small child, she would let me hold the camera and look into the viewfinder. And because it was a Rolleiflex camera, it had a really big viewfinder that you could look down into. And for me, as a small person, it was magical because I couldn't understand how the picture that I could see in the viewfinder was in color. And when I saw the photograph, it was black and white. This had to be
Absolutely.
magic. And then as I grew older, she was always interested in encouraging me to be in take a to take photographs and so on. And then one time when I was about 14, we were in Africa together, and she was supposed to be photographing a big event for a magazine, and she just didn't feel well enough. So she gave me her camera, which was a beautiful 35 mm camera with lots of lenses and everything, a light meter and so on. And she gave me a little bit of instruction as to how to use it, and she gave me the best piece of advice I have ever had around photography because she said to me, if you drop that camera, I will break your neck. And from that day to this, I have not yet dropped a camera. And so she actually catapulted me into photography at the deep end, and I was always grateful for that.
So, growing up around art and stories of war, how did that shape your view of life and creativity?
Well, there were never any stories of war. She never spoke about the war, unless it was to tell me something funny that had happened, like when her Jeep got stuck in the mud or something like that. Because the war was too personal and too traumatic for her. She never spoke about it to me. She talked to other people occasionally, but not to me. But what she would talk about was her artist friends and people that she had had wonderful experiences with, people like Man Ray. She would talk about taking pictures with Man Ray and this kind of lucky accidents that happened when she was developing film that resulted in the process of solarization and that sort of thing. And that was a moment when I felt close to her because she was so excited about that part of her life.
After she passed away, you discovered an archive of photos and writing. What went through your mind when you opened those boxes for the first time?
I was absolutely astonished. It was a life-changing moment because this person who I had thought of as being a useless drunk suddenly had a completely different aspect to them. I had never imagined that she had done anything important in her life. And so suddenly here, with these amazing photographs from the war, from before the war, from Egypt, from other places in the world, and in that moment, I had to begin re-evaluating my opinion and my understanding of her. And as I got more and more into this, we created the photographs, the negatives that we found. We began to make the archive, and then I was invited to write the biography of her. And in so doing, I met lots of people who knew her and could tell me so much about her. And of course, that began the process of me understanding who she was, what she'd achieved, and why she behaved in the manner that she did.
So did discovering the archive change the way you understood her as a person?
Well, completely, because I suddenly found, instead of this useless person that I had thought had never done anything, she had had this incredible career. Well, before the war, she had photographed in New York and in Paris. She'd had her own studios. Then she'd photographed widely in Egypt. I hadn't known anything about this. And so it was a wonderful experience. And then, of course, the war material made me reevaluate her for her bravery and her ingenuity and her tenacity and the way she kept going under terrible conditions. And the way the war was so personal to her, because when she arrived in Dachau concentration camp, she was looking for the people who had gone missing from Paris, the friends that she had known there. And they'd been taken by the Nazis and taken away. And so she was looking to see if she could find them among all the skeletal people in Dachau.
So did she find anyone or they were all gone? Anyone who she
Um,
knew at that point
she
of time?
She didn't find anybody that she had had a strong personal connection to, but they did find somebody that was a colleague, a journalist colleague who had been imprisoned. Um, Most of the guys that she knew had been taken to other camps and murdered
Okay.
there.
Uh, she went through war, trauma, and long silences. According to you, what was she carrying inside?
She was carrying the most appalling trauma inside. When you understand what she's been through, you recognize that it must have been absolutely horrific. It was bad enough in the battles that she witnessed when she would be watching people, soldiers that she'd been talking to like an hour before, and they would advance into machine gun fire and get mown down, get killed in front of her. I mean, that must have been awful to be part of that and terrifying, to be under air raids and bombings and shellings, sometimes for days. Um, we worked out that she had been under fire for more than 30 days. That is a very long time. And that has to leave a trauma in itself, the fear, the experience of that. But then on top of that, there was the way that she had such a connection to people in Paris. And when she got there at the time of liberation, so many were missing. They'd been taken away by the Nazis because they were Jewish or because they were dissidents or because they were surrealist artists or what. And, they were just gone. And that was horrific to her. Also, people that she knew and loved had been on the run from the Gestapo for the whole war, and it had ruined their health and it had nearly destroyed them as well. So the whole thing was this most personal and lived experience, which must have been incredibly hard to cope with after the war. But none of us knew because she didn't talk about it. Not even my father knew half of what she'd done.
How did your family handle the two sides of the fearless correspondent and the private wounded woman?
Well, we only saw the wounded woman who was determined not to appear as wounded because she always put on a very brave face and she would keep herself very busy doing things to prevent the idea of thinking too much about what had happened. And at the same time, we knew that she was prone to depression. We knew that she suffered a lot from alcoholism. And it was difficult to cope with because it, like you said, it's like dealing with two different people. One of them is incredibly interesting and very focused and very together in what they do, and the other is completely overruled by their depression and their alcohol.
Are there any parts of her story you think more people talked about more?
Well, people talk about her story in a lot of different ways now because it's so multifaceted. There's so many aspects of it that there's always something in there that appeals at a personal level to someone. So maybe they get excited about the way that she broke conventional taboos, that she decided that she was going to be a free woman and do what she liked and have her own career. And this was a time when women just did not do that.
Yeah.
And it was a time in society that women were not expected to be anything except conventional. And she was decided, no, okay, I am going to make my own life. I'm not going to do what I'm told by other people. And this was a really groundbreaking thing. And today I find women who are still inspired by that. Um, then there are others who were completely overwhelmed by the way that she was so incredibly brave. And there are others who always love the fact that she's so honest and that she writes so clearly in her dispatches that we feel like we're standing there with her, or maybe that she's just talking to us and telling us what happened in her own voice because it's so personal and it's so vivid. So yeah, it affects a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, and it's very rewarding for me to see this.
Lee broke barriers in her time. What message do you
Yeah.
think women in all aspects of life can learn from her story?
Women who I meet who want to talk about this tell me that there are many barriers that they've broken. And they start with fairly regular things, like people come along to me and say, "Oh, I was so inspired by Lee Miller that I dumped a really bad relationship, and I've gone off and I found somebody else and I'm much happier." I thought, "Yeah, great, okay." And then they say, "Oh, I was so inspired by Lee Miller that I dumped a very boring job that had nowhere to go, and now I've become something else. I've become a photographer. I've followed whatever I wanted to do. I've followed my dream, and I'm so much happier." And then sometimes, and I really worry when they tell me this, they say, "Yeah, I'm now a combat photographer, and I photograph conflict around the world." And I think to myself, I'm so honored that Lee inspired you to do this, but please be careful because it is such a dangerous thing to do. We need you out there telling us what's going on, but please don't go and get wounded or killed because that's not a helpful thing for you in your life. And so we have all these different permutations, these different levels of way that people have been inspired. And I find that a wonderful legacy that she's still doing this years after she's died. She's still actually inspiring people.
Did the film Lee capture her true spirit, her humor, her strength, and complexities?
The movie Lee, I thought, was a fantastically accurate portrait, and it's mainly because it was made by a woman who is in many ways like the best qualities of Lee Miller, and that's Kate Winslet. And Kate has that incredible intelligence that Lee had. The intelligence that is not an academic intelligence, but it's just a way of understanding things and getting behind the story and really, really involving herself with it. She's also a very forceful person. She gets things done. She is also a person with a tremendous sense of integrity, fairness, truth. And the reason that I feel the movie Lee is so fantastic is because Kate made it with a whole bunch of other women. Their main producer was also a woman. Our director was a woman. Our two screenwriters were women. And so it's a film about a woman made by women. And that's why I think it's so incredibly good.
What do you hope people can learn from her life and her work?
I think if there's just to sum it up in a few lines, um, be brave, be truthful, and be free with yourself, with your ideas, with your ambitions.
What message do you think Lee Miller would like to share with the audience today if she were alive?
She would say, follow your dreams. Go and do what you feel you want to do in this world. As long as that is something that is creative, constructive, and good for everybody else. You know,
Yeah.
if you're the kind of person that wants to destroy the world, no, that's not part of this story. If you want to do good things for people and for yourself and be creative and make things which are provocative of thought, yeah, that's what she would want you to do.
Great. Thank you so much, Anthony, for sharing all this valuable knowledge and information with us. We wish you continuous success in all aspects of your life. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.